Hey, ST.
Yes,
If
mate.
you had a business, who would you use for your systems integration?
Look, I was thinking about this earlier on in the week, and I'd done a fair bit of homework on it, but the name that kept coming up was DB Results.
And GS, if you needed someone to improve your digital business transformation, who would you use?
Oh, without a doubt, I'd go straight to DB Results.
AC, digital solutions, you've got to improve it in your business. Who'd you go to?
Got to be DB Results, AA.
I tell you, DB Results are the right digital solutions for your business.
When the going gets tough.
Going gets tough.
When the going gets tough.
DB Results.
When the going gets tough.
DB Results.
Well, there you go.
I'm Ilana Razbash, and this is Radio Architecture. Good evening from beautiful Bunurong country. We are broadcasting to you live from the unceded lands of the Eastern Kulin Nation, from right here in the ancient and mighty Karim Swamp. As always, you can join the conversation and text us on the Radio Karim studio line on 0493 213 831. We'd love to have you with us. My guest and conversation partner this evening is Dr. Ilianna Ginnis. She is an access consultant and neuro-inclusive design specialist at Architecture and Access. Her award-winning PhD research at Monash University, Me in Mind, developed evidence-based design principles that enable non-verbal communicators with significant support needs and neurodivergent individuals to meaningfully participate in design processes. Ilianna now applies these principles across education, healthcare, workplace and public realm projects, bridging research and practice to advanced inclusive and sensory responsive environments. Her work is recognised for leading innovation in neurodiverse inclusion within the built environment. Welcome to the program, Ilianna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you on. I think we have some really interesting overlaps in our practice and in our areas of interest, and we'll have much to talk about in the conversation this evening. Before we get started and stuck into that, there is one question I love to ask all my guests, and that is, what's your earliest memory of a building or place?
I would actually say, without being too cliche about it, as a neuro-inclusive design consultant, that's actually a sensory room.
Oh, really?
And not necessarily from the perspective of my own, but of my sisters. So my younger sister has an intellectual disability and has significant support needs. And I remember it was one of the first environments she actually really thrived in.
Wow.
Growing up. So growing up, we went out a lot, and sometimes environments were a little bit full on for her. But I remember those were her favourite, and because we were quite young as well near her, we enjoyed them as well. So it was a really good experience. Like, it was very immersive. And you don't really see that in everyday architecture. So that's probably one of my
I have two questions instantly. And it's, how long ago was this?
Oh, we would have been quite young. So
that's pretty amazing. That's
Yeah.
quite innovative in terms quite ahead of the curve.
it was. There were therapeutic spaces at the time.
Right.
So currently now we've evolved from therapy. But at the time it was therapy that she would do to self-regulate and to, gain her, regulate her senses. And it was a really fun experience. Like, she really, really enjoyed it. And so it was a while ago. It was a few years back. I was probably maybe 14.
Wow.
Maybe it was a while ago. Yeah.
Are you able to describe this room
Yeah,
and
for
describe
sure.
the space and what made it so successful?
So the interesting thing is, when the lights were on, everything was white. So it was like a white sofa. It was white built-in soft vinyl furniture for durability, I believe. There wasn't any colour. It was warm lighting. And then when the lights went off, it was a different space. So there was a bubble tube. There was sound from the bubble tube. There was blue lights, purple lights, immersive lighting. There was a bunch of gravity chairs, is what they're called. So chairs that when you sit in, your body kind of leans back, and she enjoyed that a lot. She enjoys that the feedback from her vestibular, her body telling her something different's happening. So when the lights were off, it became a completely different space. You didn't see the white.
Wow.
So the colours actually ran through the furniture, ran through the fabrics and the materials. So it was a completely different space. So that's probably, the best description of it.
It's really interesting though that that's a space that would fall into the sensory seeking category, right?
Yeah, at times it can be a bit of both.
Okay.
So Michelle, my sister, is more so, I would say, sensory seeking than avoiding. So when she doesn't get enough information from her environment or enough feedback from her environment, she tends to look and seek for it. So these environments align very much with her sensory profile, her sensory needs. So she's very autonomous in these environments. It creates a lot of opportunity for her. They can be reduced to sensory avoiding, but generally the debate is, are they sensory rooms or are they quiet rooms? And there's flexibility around that. As an industry, we're still learning around that. Where I work, Architecture and Access, we've done the reset room guide. So we've done a lot of research around what people with diverse neurodiversities prefer naming, and that's why we said reset rooms. But they can be flexible, but majority or the well-known reason is the sensory seeking, I would say.
Wow, and that's why it has to be all white, right? Because of the therapeutic flexibility
Yeah.
and the function of that space in particular.
Yeah, look, it depends. They're all designed different. Some of them aren't necessarily white. They have their coloured carpets and they're different fabrics. But this particular one that was in a school, it was referred to as a snoozerland. So that was the first kind of terminology research that came out. So at that time, they were somewhat white for that sensory enhancement, I would say, probably.
So that you could project and have
I think
colours
so.
and lights. But now the ones that we're seeing in public buildings or in other, as really an added amenity to places,
Exactly.
are lush with colour
Exactly.
or darken the mood. And, it's not a white room. But that's still quite innovative for many years ago.
Exactly. I would say they're becoming more dignified, actually, because we're starting to recognise as a society, as an industry, it's not just about someone's disability. It's actually that anybody can use the space. Postpartum, menopause, people with trauma, people with dementia, people with intellectual disability, developmental autism. Anyone can use the space, even children. So the spaces need to accommodate to the diverse users. So instead of being childlike, they're actually extending now to become dignified to every user. And that's what the point of them should be.
That's a core word, dignity.
And it's very common within our practice at Architecture and Access. It's really, really important, and at the heart of our work is choice and dignity, and making sure that environments provide opportunity for people to feel safe, comfortable, and to make the choice that they want in their environment.
So important. Before we get too stuck into your current work, I still want to return back to the beginnings and the early influence. Why architecture? Why design? How did this career pathway come up for you?
So when I was, I want to say, around that 14, 15 mark, I assisted in becoming one of Michelle's main support workers, her carers. Our family is quite small. We're very close, intimate family. My parents are both immigrant Greeks. So we really did help out a lot at home. And I had a very close relationship and connection with Michelle. And when we used spaces, I was always thinking how that could be better. That's not enough. That could be better. So I did my interiors architecture at the time at Monash University. And I found that I always was challenging that disability lens, and I felt it wasn't enough, or I was always challenging with my tutors at the time or my lecturers, and that's what kind of got me thinking there's nothing actually out there. So my experiences through Michelle's first-hand lived experience, or through her personal reactions or avoidance of certain spaces, the disinclusion or the not allowing her to do something because of the social layer or because of the lack of facility or any of that, it made me really, really passionate to start driving this area of architecture. So after I did my 4 years, I did an honors project investigating a really hypothetical example if architecture really did work.
Wow.
What would it look like?
It's a huge question.
Yeah, yeah, and particularly with a group of profound nonverbal individuals.
Wow.
And so when I looked into the research at that time, there was nothing advocating for this specific group. And I thought, yes, we're looking into disability and neurodiversity, but what about someone who doesn't talk? What about someone who experiences and interprets the world around them completely different to a neurotypical person who understands and follows social structure? Like Michelle doesn't. She doesn't sit at a table to eat. She'll lay down, then she'll get up, then she'll sit, then she'll lay down on the floor. And, it's not neurotypical, it's not social conforming. And so when I was doing my honours, I did hypothetically develop the interior of this building that looked at challenging all of this. And the building was run and facilitated by non-verbal communicators. Very hypothetical use of technology, but it gained a lot of attention, and particularly from academics. And I was approached to do my PhD from that. And so then I had to bring that example back to ground, to level. And I thought, what can I do? So my passion and my desire to make a world for people who don't speak like Michelle or who don't experience the world like Michelle was to create a series of design principles, which were co-created to the literal co-created with non-verbal communicators at a diverse level, diverse communication, diverse ability,
Wow.
diverse age, gender. So I used a series of people at that level who have a story to say, but just because they couldn't speak, nobody asked them. So that was my passion. And so the principles came out of that PhD.
And how many stakeholder or research participants were there in your study?
Non-verbal
Yes.
were 12.
Wow.
Diverse groups, the youngest, I believe, from memory was 8. Could be even 6, but I'm pretty sure it was 8. Right down to 60, 65, almost 65. So just when that kind of, where they're considered aged care in that sense. So I looked at, males, females. One of the participants was, he came from institutionalization, which at that time, when he was growing up, has a lot of trauma informed in his behaviours. And so there was a lot of practices I had to adapt to allow ethical approaches for these users, but also to ensure that the narrative wasn't mine, it was theirs. But how I did that, there was a lot of ethical considerations to make sure that the story and the voice was their own and not mine. I was just the platform for that.
Wow. Such important work. What were some of these key principles that came out of the research?
So the ethics, definitely. So one of the things was I've worked with non-verbal individuals for a very long time, like they're second nature, like the interactions. So if someone kind of knocked their head or indicated signs of distress, it's kind of important for the researcher or myself as a designer to pull back, give them some space, allow them, to do the things that they're interested in, which I consider very important because it's their strengths. So that was very important, the ethical approach to their way they communicate. So if someone bangs a wall and shows you that they're upset, it's important to respect that. And that's how they choose to say it. And as the receiver of their message, I'm accepting it. So that's really important. Another one was to actually consider their support network. So a lot of the times, it's really important to think, what does family say, and what their carers saying. But at the same time, it's also to look at them and how they're projecting their feelings and their thoughts. Because knowing someone well, you might talk for them, but it's important as the researcher or the designer, or in this case, the consultant, to allow their voices to be the main voice. And that's just a backup or a follow-up for what you're seeing and what you're kind of interacting with. There was quite a few other ones, like allow me to be me, or allow me to use my own voice, whether that was a device, whether that was behaviours, whether that was interaction with materials and noises and stuff. There was a few main things that came out to display that they can communicate, and we should listen to the message that's coming.
Amazing. So important. What's the biggest takeaway you think members of the general public who've never worked with people with a disability, who've never really kind of don't even think about people who aren't nonverbal? That's kind of the reality of our world, how it's unfolding. What's the biggest lesson you want to impart on them? What's the biggest message to the public?
Just because someone can't speak doesn't mean they have nothing to say. So it's really important that within the community, we understand that these are individuals within our community, and we need to accept each other, and we need to provide safe spaces for each other. But at the same time, acknowledge that we're not all the same, and we don't all communicate the same. And sensory needs, behavioural needs are not static. So we're very dynamic as humans. And I just heard today at a conference that I was at actually this morning for a sensory for education schools, making them more inclusive. Just because something is easy doesn't mean it's right. So just because these individuals have complicated needs or have diverse needs or need a little bit more time, need a little bit more adjustment for their communication and their voice, doesn't mean that it's we shouldn't be doing it.
Of course not. A society is judged on how they treat their most vulnerable.
Exactly. 100%. That's very true.
And there's how those who need the most support and the most inclusion. But I mean, most listeners would be familiar with the late genius Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And what ideas and what innovation and what talent is with these individuals as well.
For sure, yeah.
What possibility could be there, and we should all have that open-mindedness and possibility as designers, as planners, as city makers, and not see inclusivity as a hurdle or good design, accessible design as a barrier. What does good design mean to you?
It means, to me, good design means that it means a few things. So one of the things I would say is that it's safe. It's safe for everyone. Whether you have dementia, whether you're just aged, whether you have a disability, whether it doesn't judge you based on these characteristics. It's just a safe space for you to work in, function in, live in, play in. But as well, I would say it's a flexible space. It's a space that adjusts to the specific needs of the user it's catering. That's what I would say good design is. And I know it's a little bit challenging in some contexts, but providing adjustments or providing a variety of different options is kind of flexible and can support users, depending on the context, of course. But yeah,
I guess we're thinking about buildings, right? That's the evolution of that building, and that building's use becomes so much more long term.
Exactly.
Right, with that inbuilt flexibility that allows us to make some of those adaptations. There's, of course, a really negative view and really unfortunate view that accessibility is expensive.
Yes, that's very common.
And especially changing places are expensive.
But very relevant.
But if you just read the user stories at the front of that design document, I remember when I was a student, I read that document for the first time and it hit me, almost broke me to tears.
Yes, yep.
When I realised, hang on, without this facility, so many people in our community can't leave the house.
Exactly. And being changed on the floor, no one deserves that.
No.
No one deserves that. And I've had the privilege of working with one of the people who helped design the guide, Helen Fernwannen. And it's just an incredible experience to see how far they've come in those guidelines and applying them. And now they're not just a guideline, they're actually really, really crucial in the implementation of, as you would know as an architect, a lot of our environments. You know, it's in the NCC now.
Yes.
It's in the guidelines. We have to include it in some spaces. So it's really important now. It shows you how far accessibility can come.
And do you think it's getting faster and faster?
Yes and no. I think in terms of physical accessibility, look, yes, I think so. But I was having a discussion with a colleague about livable housing, and that wasn't really, when they were first implemented, it wasn't really adapted. And now that it's become part of our legislation, it is. So I think it's some of it is a bit slow in some areas. Neurodiversity has some way to go, but I think we're getting there. But there's work. There's definitely work.
There's a lot of stigma, I think, to overcome. How do you deal with that professionally in your role as a consultant as well? What's your number one trick? for kind of blowing that stigma out of the water?
In stigma, do you mean assumptions of people?
Yeah, perhaps so.
Yeah. In the beginning, I was a little bit more, when I was younger, when I was studying and I kind of first got into this area, because I was so passionate, I was very determined. I was very, quite telling architects what to do.
Hot-headed.
Yeah,
super
I was,
motivated.
this is what you need to do, and why aren't we doing this, and why, and why. And then as I was learning and meeting architects, actually architects really care. They really, really care. They just, they need the support, and that's okay, to ask for support. And so I approach it by educating, by informing people, by creating narratives or telling them about people's stories, because that's why people learn. I don't approach it anymore with that sort of like that sort of
Gung-ho aggression.
Yeah. It's a bit more now about, where do you need support? How can we support you? So now architects, they're very interested, and as architects, generally they're empathetic to the story, to the line, and you can see there's a massive improvement in the years that I've worked in the architectural industry, and now as an access consultant, near inclusive design consultant. They really care. They really, really care. I mean, we're having whole conferences on them. Where architects are one of the main attendees. We're being hired to help facilitate the inclusive design of an entire project. We're doing a TAFE, and it's with a major architect, and they really care. And we're having conversations every 2-3 days. There's an ongoing conversation, and even simple questions like, which floor finish do you recommend? Is this lighting okay? What degree of lighting can we use? So I think slowly, surely, the story is becoming more important to architecture.
And those stories are so important because that's what we connect to.
Exactly. And we did a post-occupancy evaluation, a sensory one, actually, and what helped tie the client back to the importance of the story was the users, was the students who were non-verbal, was the students who had their specific little interests, and that's what really tied the client back to, wow, this really is important, how users feel in the post-development of the design.
Oh, wow. When there's a big idea you need to protect and preserve,
Yes.
remembering that in the design process is so
And it's very hard.
important.
It's very hard, especially when cost comes into the equation. Cost is one of the main, especially with users who need more time and need more immersive methods to understand and get their input. Like, I use intensive interaction, which is very intensive one-to-one engagement with the user, and things like sensory ethnography, which was developed by Dr. Sarah Pink at Monash University, which is kind of understanding the user's experience through your experience with them. So these are intensive methodologies. They take time. I can't just go, I'm inputting myself into someone else's life, into someone else's routine, into someone else's reality. And by respecting that, I have to take the time that they take to understand their environment and their processing and their input, their sensory avoiding. Like, these are important. So unfortunately, part of the conversation is cost and time.
I know each user group is unique, each community is unique, but are you developing now a learning kind of data set of these experiences and information you can draw on that will over time will make this consultation process more efficient or help form up more guidelines in order to make it more cost effective for clients?
Look, yes and no. When it comes to co-design and how to start co-design and how to implement it, yes, we do. We are starting to tailor a few more, make a few more things solid. Let's say that. But in terms of having one solution fits all, it's very hard. Everyone's different. You can have the same. You can both be called, autistic, but you have very different experiences of your environment and your processing and all that. So in some ways, yes and no. So when it comes to someone at a profound level, you can't tie a process to a specific person. Everyone's going to respond and react differently. Every day is different. Every sensory experience is different. So it's very, very hard to, I guess, tie these things. But we do have processes that we've developed to assist the general intake of these stories and these narratives and stuff like that. So,
but I imagine for like a public facility where the cohort is frequently turning
Exactly.
over, you've got to take that average. But
Yes.
when you're doing bespoke housing and housing for really
Yes.
particular needs, that becomes a bespoke consultation
Exactly.
approach.
And there's more flexibility in when you're doing your home. There's a little bit less when you're doing public space, right? And so it's hard to standardize a process that's so diverse in its users. So if the users are so incredibly diverse, it's hard to standardize a process. So my actually advice would be, as architects, as designers, as consultants, we need to do more listening and more observing, more listening, whatever listening looks like. It might be listening, might be watching someone and understanding why they do a certain thing that they do. Is the listening is key, and that shapes the process. That shapes the little key things that we've got that we implement after in part of that co-design or part of that suggesting and recommending and all that.
So important. I wonder if there's another topic worth repeating in past conversations. Definitely engage with this, and listeners may remember hearing about universal design principles. Do you want to explain what that means for our audience again?
Yeah, so universal design principles are a series of principles that it can be applied across design. In terms of the built environment specific, it's the principles are applied to the environment so that they can be accessed and the environment can be designed for anybody and everybody. Yes, they're great, they're fantastic, but they're a starting point. I wouldn't simply start and stop there. Because there's been a lot of development since the universal design principles, and yes, they're fantastic, and yes, it's kind of what we use to start our artwork, but there's been a lot of development from that. So I think
Well, tell us more. Where have we developed onto? Because I know for many colleagues, they're seeing universal design principles as the new current gold standard that's advanced on top of general DDA accessibility. So where have we advanced since then?
well, to start, the universal design principles are very generic, and it's done with intention because it should fit anybody and everybody. But I mean, they have been developed. Things have been developed much further since then. I mean, we're starting to recognise people within our communities. We're starting to shift that medical model to the social model. So it's not up to someone to explain their disability. It's up to the environment to facilitate their disability. And I don't think the universal design principles initially started that. They just started to become equitable spaces. But now we're becoming, I guess, more mindful of the diversities among our community. I mean, we have gender diversity, we have diverse neurological abilities, and the universal design principles, I suppose, are very generic for the diverse audience groups that we do have and we need to accommodate for, even Indigenous groups. So I don't think that, while they're a great starting point, I think there's more delving that needs to be done beyond that. It's very surface level.
It's a good beginning.
It's a good beginning.
Is what I'm hearing, and
Yeah.
you've got to consider the immediate community
Exactly.
that you're designing
Exactly.
for, responding to. Oh, that becomes its own longevity question, doesn't it? As we know, demographics of Melbourne can change pretty rapidly from decade to decade. But we're building these facilities that are to last 50 years, at least for their functional building life. I'm imagining, public hospitals, libraries, schools, where they have fairly substantial lifespans of projects.
But when they're done and not monitored, they get very outdated quite quick. So we've got, at Architecture and Access, we actually, when we look at sensory auditing or even access audits, when we do more so the NCC BCA, but even the sensory side, you see how outdated these facilities are. They look outdated. And if someone doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel comfortable in a space, that can ruin their whole experience. So the aesthetics of a space in some ways are important to the sensory or to the comfort, to the interoperception, which
Or
is
even
like
trauma triggers, for example.
Yeah, for sure. And materials do age. Like, for example, a lot of people with the NDIS don't want vinyl in their home on the floor. And while it is the standard, slip resistance, the best kind of material you can use to avoid, injury or slipping, or people don't want it. People don't want it.
Institutional.
It is, exactly. And we've developed since that. We have really developed since that. So people want innovative solutions. They want to look at their environments, be fresh. I mean, if you go into an environment that's outdated, you don't feel you can trust the space. It is a real barrier sometimes.
Trust in the environment. That's a really interesting point.
And it's if you can't kind of predict as well your spaces, or you can't feel that sense of comfortability within your space, it becomes a very negative experience. Yeah, and that's often with, particularly with hospitals and some schools, when we don't upgrade them, and that's why post occupancy is really important. And it's yes, it is done, but it's not to the level it probably should.
It's probably done even less frequently than a decent stakeholder consultation.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
And when you get it, it's all graphs. It's not users. It's not quotes. It's not qualitative. It's all numbers and the material and but what about the human and how they feel, or their emotional, are their emotional needs met, or are their comfortability, or is, that safety, that trust, and it's that level isn't interrogated enough.
I'm really interested in this idea of trust in the environment, and therefore, in effect, trust in the social contract, right? Or trust in that public service. Can you say more about that idea?
I guess so. In terms of disability, I'm speaking specifically, disability has come a really long way. So we had I believe it's a nothing about us without us, that kind of movement. Back when the access just wasn't, it wasn't crucial. So I guess naturally people didn't trust their environments. Like, I was speaking to a woman who uses a mobility aid, and she said to me, you get up and you go to work. I have to get up and I have to think, what's the weather and how do I get there? And are there stairs? Are there lifts? Are there this? Are there handrails? Are there, accessible toilets on the facility? So my trust in a building is much more, I would say, less significant to my experience than someone with a disability, regardless of the disability. So, for instance, someone with a mobility aid who needs to consider all this much in advance before actually entering the building, so without physically being in the building, it does diminish their trust in the building. So if you're going there and you have to take all these alternative routes, regardless of the amount of planning that you've done in advance, it's an emotional toll. It really is. It's an emotional toll. It's a confidence kind of drop, because you're thinking, I did plan for this, and again, it didn't. People shouldn't have to change for the environment. The environment should be adaptive. The environment should be inclusive. And still we have some issues. We still have a lot.
I think we're always going to. I think it's going to be an eternal process,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah, we have an aging population. We have a massive aging population, multi-generational living. People don't want to go in aged cares. They don't want to go in institutionalizations. They want to stay at home. They want to age at home. And dementia lately was actually listed as one of the biggest causes in Australia in one of the biggest disability kind of things. Wow. So, we need to start adapting environments for future-proofing. And what does future-proofing look like? Trusting the environment. How do we trust the environment? Predictability, safe spaces, reset rooms, warm lighting, neutral colour palettes that can assist someone. But then also having a room that has a bit more of that colour, has a bit more of that that different tone that someone can pick and choose between, and it's not this all,
this choice.
Exactly,
giving
choice.
the users choice in their environment.
Exactly. And it is hard to achieve it everywhere, but the best thing that we can do is actually
to try.
Yeah, and have some sort of the accessibility should be at the beginning of the process, not something that's left last. And I'm really seeing a change though. It is in architecture. Architects are really taking it on board, and they really do care. They take their reviews that we conduct for them very seriously. They really do try. They do try, and they do care about what we have to say as access consultants about the result of their work, and it's important to them.
What's the message you'd like building owners, or for public facilities, of course, the government at all scales, who are actually the largest client and the largest commissioner of architecture in Australia, is the government. We build an enormous amount of public buildings in this country, which is both a wonderful thing, but it means they should be following much of the advice that's being offered to them. What is, from your perspective, that biggest piece of advice or learning that you want to advocate up to government about?
actually start listening to your users. I know that they are trying. Government are trying. That we have worked a lot with government, and we're seeing a difference towards that area. But I think more needs to be invested in what are people experiencing. What are people not liking? I just heard something recently about as government and consultants, we're all coming up with questions to ask. But have we actually asked people with diverse disabilities or diverse experiences, what questions do you want to be asked? Because it's very hard for us to understand their lived experience if we're not asking them, actually, what do you want us to know? Like, what do you want us to do for you? And if it's not asked, then it's hard for someone to advocate or communicate that. And particularly in, how are groups going to reach to this level of government where they're actually telling government, look, this is really important for me. This is a shared experience among the disability community. So I think that more consultation, more co-design needs to be put out there. I don't think there's enough co-design, particularly with vulnerable groups. There's not enough.
Do you feel it's a matter of bridging the professional world and academia and research, who are probably doing the majority of this work, such as your amazing PhD?
Mm-hmm. I think that it needs to be intersection of things. So practice needs to be involved. Government needs to be involved, like policy. People should be in the centre of it, so lived experience, right at the centre of it. So everything is coming past them. And then access consultants as facilitators, particularly neuro-inclusive, which Architecture and Access does. They need to be they need to assist in the facilitation of it, which we are doing with this TAFE, for example, which has appeared to be very successful at this stage. So the framework needs to change. The procedures we are taking to make sure something is inclusive, is it really? Do we know? There's not enough of that feedback loop, or someone needs to be from the start to the very end of the process, not, we do a small consultation period and we got what we needed. It needs to be throughout and very, very much detailed throughout.
And really, at the end, I'm thinking at the end of that whole process, and this is something I only learned about really recently, but effectively user stories where visitors to a building could go to the website and download a little guide to prepare themselves for the experience of visiting that building and visiting that public facility, like the Melbourne Aquarium has one, for example.
The social stories, yeah.
Social stories.
Yep.
That's right.
They're very significant in someone's predictability and preparation of space. That's very significant. So we're actually doing an access map with Open House. I'm sure you're familiar with
Open House
that.
Melbourne, and our listeners indeed are very familiar with Open House Melbourne, a wonderful program.
Incredible. So this year Architecture and Access, we aligned along with Tract and Maptivate, did an incredible access map. And the feedback that came through for people around that predictability, which is similar to a social story, not to the extent, but people could see, was there parking? Is there a sensory room? Is there wide hallways for me? Is there an accessible toilet for me? It was kind of that heading towards that social story kind of predictability planning lens. But the next step we are taking, actually a part of version 2 of it, because it got such amazing feedback from people with lived experience, we're going to input social stories into that. So that becomes part of the architectural experience. So someone looks at the map, they open the social story if they require, they use the space, they function in the space, and they give feedback after that. So Open House is really, really keen on feedback. So they get a lot of feedback to ensure that their processes are constantly improving, and they really are. Like, we started with this small idea of this access map, and now people are relying and really want it. And it's really helpful to their experience. And a lot of people with lived experience used it. Even mums with prams have used it. It's a really incredible, something so small impacted so many people. And you're not aware of it until you really hear the stories. Which
common scenario where there's a complex need, there's an accessibility solution that comes from it, but then there's a universal benefit. So it's mums with prams who need ramps, who need wide doorways, who need corridors that are wide enough.
Exactly. And that, sensory considerations benefit us all. Like, I would benefit from a quiet space. I would benefit from... anyone would. So if we're kind of doing things like this for the community that requires it, we're 100% going to benefit from that result as well. So that's why it's universal, I guess, in that sense.
And where the consideration of dignity and good design and taste and make it neat and make it nice, make it elegant, pushes it into that universal moment where, hey, this is just a cool room that I want to be in. I'd rather chill out in here for a bit.
Yep. And that's starting to humanize the room. So it's no longer, a room for therapy, or it's no longer a room for specific people that we're, that medical model. Now it's starting to become, we have these users, we need to accommodate for these users, and we're starting to implement these spaces. And I think that I have seen a trend is they tend to mix it with prayer rooms, like social room, respite rooms. They mix them with prayer rooms, and they're both equally as important. So they shouldn't be mixed.
Yeah.
In some spaces, it is difficult because of the layout and the size of the space and the accommodation for things. But if you're likely to have a certain amount of users at a time, you can predict that. For larger spaces, they should be separated. They should be two different spaces, because it's someone who wants to retreat and who needs a break also wants to respect someone who's trying to pray.
Yeah.
So it's important that we consider everyone, and that's that important element, not to mix. It's, let's make it obvious. Let's celebrate the fact that this is part of our space.
Exactly. Or design it in as
Exactly.
as an offshoot or a section of a larger open plan space that doesn't involve, going to a separate room,
Yes,
closing
yes.
a door and removing yourself from the events of the whole building.
It's not a oh, here we go. It should be, yes, we need to do this. And that's the difference that it's shifting in architecture.
I'm excited about this social stories concept. I'm going to make my students do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really good.
As part of their assignments, part of their design. I think that next step in empathy and thinking and crafting their experience, because that's what we have to train the next generation of students and graduates and young professionals in, of actually having that empathy step by step. Imagine what it would be like to be in this space.
Yeah, exactly.
Blows my mind when I realize not all my colleagues think that way.
Yes, yeah. And it's still very new as a concept, universal design accessibility. It's still very much new. And we're still learning in the space. So that's also very important to understand, that we need to go back and revisit what did we learn, what could we improve, so that we know that, and social stories are a part of that, improving that experience and that general feel of space. So they inform that.
I mentioned this to you off air during our sound check that a little while ago someone had asked me that in the next decade, do you imagine that all students would be learning about sensory design and acoustics and the performance of sound in space? Is that going to be part of our curriculum? And I said, absolutely. What are your thoughts?
I really do believe so. I mean, we're having whole conferences on it. So I really do believe so. The amount of professionals in this space currently is growing. Every time I go to a conference, I see more and more. Every time I have a meeting with councils and government, I see more and more. It's important, though, that we do look at make sure that it's evidence-based, and we're not just, looking at consultants and professionals that really in the research and in the people that they're supporting. But I do see it in our curriculum. I mean, disability 10 years ago, accessibility wasn't where it is now, and now it's a crucial part of the design process. We're no longer at the bottom of the food chain. We're actually part of the integrated process as access consultants. So I can only imagine where neuro-inclusion is going to go.
Well, you certainly are on government projects as compulsory.
Exactly. Yeah, government and urban scale now. So we're doing a few projects at Architecture and Access with urban, and government cares, and they really want to know what's going on and how do we improve that. And I mean, DDA is extended beyond the four walls of a building, and it's going out to the street, and that's really crucial. And now, while we're doing that, we're actually integrating neuro-inclusion. So I can only imagine in 10 years what neuro-inclusion is going to look like. I mean, it'll definitely be a major consideration, and more and more people are diagnosed because of that social inclusion that's coming through now. So it's only going to benefit everyone at the end.
Meanwhile, at the same time, our population is aging.
Exactly.
We'll have more people
Yep.
potentially experiencing cognitive decline, more people using hearing aids, more people who maybe rely on aids and support to augment the information that's coming for them.
Exactly. And in such an unpredictable world with technology and all that happening at the moment.
Meta AI,
Yep.
glasses just swarmed my
Exactly.
phone in the last week with ads.
Exactly. Very true. With all this unpredictable information coming at us, people rely on their environments to support them, I think, in the long run. And particularly, we're not only just thinking, when we're thinking neurodiverse, it's not just disability. It's trauma. It's women going through menopause who require spaces to retreat and who get who need their temperature to be very consistent or flexible. It's not just benefiting a specific group. It's actually, when we do our neuro-inclusive audits, it goes beyond just a person with a disability. It goes beyond to diverse user groups.
When done successfully, benefits everyone.
Exactly. And that's the key.
That's the key. We keep coming back to that point over and over again through the conversation, but I think it's so important to reiterate. Of course, when we think about the future, everyone's thinking about and sometimes concerned about AI. How do you feel that'll impact the space of access consulting and both from a code compliance perspective? Do you think that bit will just get quicker and easier? The toilet drawings will be checked by AI and you can get onto the important stuff?
Look, that's a hard question to answer. I don't particularly. Look, I hope not. But that layer of disability access, I think if you remove the human layer, it does lose a lot. The things that we look at architecture and access, we don't just look at as a handrail in the perfect position. We actually talk to the client through things. So, like for example, luminance contrast, where it's not needed, but it's really important because it's going to improve bunch of people's lives with vision impairment. Yes, the toilet is accessible, but have you considered layering it in this kind of location, because it's the person's journey and the person's predictability, and the person using a wheelchair is going to be really beneficial to the area that it's located in because it's right next to the lecture hall, so it's dignified. That I don't think AI can provide that as of yet. So that layer that we give, that layer of
the
expertise, that empathy layer that we do at our job, I don't think currently AI can. I don't think so. I mean, AI couldn't go into that human element or human experience of why and how. And I think consultants currently, we do that, particularly us. I think it's that human lived experience, that caring layer, that it doesn't exist in technology yet.
I think you and I are both in the same camp that it's a tool that it might help with the boring bits, but
Exactly.
it's not going to take our jobs.
Exactly. I don't believe so, no. I don't believe so. Particularly because, consulting is more than just telling you what's wrong. It's about building to understand and help understand and learn why this is a little bit better. And there's not one solution doesn't fit all in access. So, in many situations, where TGSIs go, we recommend them in other locations, or handrails in some locations that aren't compliant, we recommend them in or don't recommend them. So it's not black and white accessibility, even though it might seem like it is. It actually really isn't. It's very tactile and it's very diverse.
In the tech space, or do you see an opportunity that it will help with access?
Definitely. And we are in the process of starting to develop that. It's very important. But I think it will in the long run, because it's going to start to, inform us of what else to look out for. I guess once we pick that something else is wrong, it might just kind of like tell us, have you considered this as well? So I think it can benefit in some areas in that tech area. And we do have a lot of technology that we use at Architecture and Access for our auditing and our measuring and our notes. And we do have a bit of technology, but we have to keep up there. We are quite advanced with our work, and we're the largest access consultancy in Australia. So to keep that up, we have to keep up where the world is heading. So it's really important. I think technology is embedded and it works with us, and we don't work against it. So I think that's really important as well. And it is beneficial. It really is.
And on the flip side, in terms of user-side tech, certainly we've heard about AI glasses for people who are vision impaired, who make huge difference to their lives. I wonder, are we going to have AI hearing aids? I've heard just the other week I learned that Apple AirPods can act as a hearing aid.
Oh, really? Okay, wow.
The little mic in there can pick it up and
That's
amplify
incredible.
it for you. So if you're not playing a song, it'll just amplify what it's hearing.
Interesting. I know if you're talking, it kind of if you go to talk, it reduces that sound. So, for example, a lot of vision impaired people with assistance animals, when they want to talk to the animal, it actually drops that sound so they can hear themselves talk to their animal. So technology is great in many cases that it can really assist. Yeah. So, look, it depends how it's implemented again. And it's constantly an innovative area. So I think that's really important as well. that we're understanding. Because for intellectual disability, for example, if we overcomplicate the system, it's not going to help
Yeah.
people who have a voice, but it might help a different area like hearing impairment or vision. So it's really important to look at the implication and look at why and the reasons why we're implementing it and how, I think.
As we're having this conversation, I had a thought of in the future, sensory seeking or sensory avoidant rooms or these dynamic rooms, the AI would be able to pick up the user's experience or their feelings much faster than they could press the buttons or activate whatever they wanted, and the space could respond to them.
And that's a really amazing example of how that could be implemented, or it can kind of sense their dysregulation or their need for regulation, or a quick tap of a "I'm stressed" can make the room light up. But again, it is diverse because I guess humans we're not technology, we're people, and we experience things and feel things in very certain ways. Like there's certain days I want all my lights on, and then there's other days where I don't want it, but I'm having the same emotion. So can it respond to that level of diversity?
We'll see.
Who knows? Yeah,
We will see what the future holds.
Yeah. And there's a lot to still go. I think there's a long way to still go.
And still a role for researchers, for experts, for people such as yourself who are passionate in the field.
Yeah.
And your very important work has been recognised. You were part of the last year's 30 under 30, or this year's 30 under 30 cohort. How was that trip to Bali?
Oh, it was incredible. So a bunch of amazing designers, incredible mentors, incredible program. It was amazing. And what I actually really loved about it was I applied as a Access Neuro-Inclusive Design Consultant, and I found it amazing because all the designers that were on board, we do the access for. So we do all the accessibility or the neuro-inclusive design for them, and it was an incredible experience where a unique position where I was able to kind of understand what their concerns were in terms of their projects, and then implement this, I guess, diverse lens where they can start to think about, I didn't think about, why certain material choices would be better than others, or I didn't think that we could start to consider that into the bigger picture of our design. So it was a really good conversation. It was a really meaningful trip. It wasn't limiting in any way. It was really meaningful, I think, in the long run.
Could build a certain collegiate empathy with each other to understand the sort of work that you both do.
Yeah.
Or the other amazing participants on that trip and program.
Exactly.
What's the biggest lesson or learning and takeaway? What's something you received from the mentors on that trip that just leaves you with a wow?
It's a very good
day?
question. In terms of my work, if I can say about my work, I would say that it taught me to be proud of what I do, but most of all that my multidisciplinary, I guess, expertise should be celebrated in a regard. It shouldn't be something where we try to fit in because it's important because architecture. No, it was very much very, very celebrated. So it taught me to be very proud of the work that we're putting out there and constantly be contributing. But the other thing it taught me is actually to look after yourself. So it's really important that while, yes, we're go-getters and it's important to work hard, and architects work very hard. Like, we do crazy hours and we work extremely, even access consultants or interior. But then it's looking after yourself, because if you can't look after yourself, it's very hard for you to promote and look after your projects.
And how are you going to do your best work? You can't.
No, you can't. In the long run, no. Yeah. And it's really important in this world where technology is so accessible from the house, from the office, that we do that.
Wow, so there's a huge focus on well-being.
Yes, yeah.
On the retreat too.
Yes, exactly. And I think because generally, not necessarily in Access, I wouldn't say we're very fortunate, but I think in architecture and my years of working in the interiors, there is that culture that we need to work overtime and all that stuff. And the retreat taught that that's okay to put up your hand and
toxic.
Yeah. It is, unfortunately. I think architecture has that. It's heavy on it a bit.
Very important lessons, very, very big lessons. I know it's also held in some amazing locations.
Yeah, it is.
I'm trying to get the scoop for our listeners on how that whole program was. anything from the architecture or the design, particularly resort architecture, is its own flavour. Any spaces that leave a lasting impression on you?
For the retreat or just in general?
Yeah, from that trip.
You know what I actually really loved? When you close your eyes, you feel the space even though you're not looking at it. It's really interesting. So it was very what's the word I'm looking for? There was a beautiful smell. Like, you know, when you go into a spa and there's that beautiful smell, that was constant. It was constant. And all the walls were different feelings, and you could tell exactly where you were based on the feel of the wall.
Wow.
Like the certain corridor had a certain feeling, a certain temperature, because it was outdoor. And then when you walked towards, I guess, lifts, there was a different experience. That transitional space was very different. Like, it was more glossier finishes. And that comes from, you know, it was all refurbished material, and the bricks were made hands on site, and it was just incredible. Like, when you close your eyes, you feel the space. If I can put it in short,
That's good architecture.
that's incredible. It was very nice.
That's good design.
And biophilic as well. There's a lot of biophilia, which is very important.
Super important for well-being.
Exactly. Yep. Stress. And you know, it comes back down to, if you look at Indigenous culture, it's very important to our land. It's very important to how we feel and experience space. It's crucial.
It's really coming back to those first principles
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
of getting it all right. Ultimately, I am mindful of the time. So I will ask my last question, and that's, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope in my experience is that I'm starting to see that Michelle is lasting longer in spaces, my sister. She's starting to enjoy her experience in public space. And I'm starting to see the impact of architects caring on people like Michelle. So I am seeing the lived experience of that minority grow. And that's giving me hope.
That's really beautiful. I'm going to squeeze in one more question. I'm cheeky. I'm going to be greedy tonight. One more question. What's the biggest lesson Michelle has taught you?
To have patience. To have a lot of patience and to have a lot of empathy. So a lot of empathy. I would say, look, she doesn't experience space like I do. So for me, it was that learning how, why. So the patience is a very key thing in both my work and my practice. And on top of all of that, it's to do what you believe in, regardless of if it's not going to be considered right, or if it's not the law and it's not the practice and it's a no. If you feel strongly that someone is not advocated for, and that's what we really do and we love, we advocate for them.
Oh, you have amazing advice. Thank you so much for joining me on the program, Ilianna.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for another evening of radio architecture with Ilana Razbash. This live show was broadcast and recorded in the Radio Karim studio on Bunurong Country. You can replay this show wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and supporting community radio. Take care.
Hi, this is Marcus from Hot Tubs Time Machine in the UV race. You're listening to Radio Karim. Keep it real and enjoy life.
Hi, this is Mindy Wang. You're listening to Radio